Have you ever seen a horse in their stall weaving from side to side, seemingly endlessly? Have you ever seen a horse grab onto something with its teeth, pull back, and make a grunting noise? If you're an equestrian, the answer is probably yes, and you probably know that these behaviors are called stall weaving and cribbing, and these are both examples of stereotypic behaviors. I think stereotypic behaviors, cribbing especially, are probably some of the most misunderstood behaviors in horses. I have seen so much confusion and misinformation about them online, particularly on TikTok, because TikTok is the home of brain rot. Honestly, I hate TikTok. Horse talk anyways, which is the side of TikTok that I'm on. I honestly have little to no desire to be on TikTok at all, but it is the easiest app to make short form content on, best audios, best filters and effects, best trends, so I'm kind of stuck with it. But TikTok never rewards me for my efforts. I'll spend a ton of time on like one video, I'll post it on TikTok, maybe get 500 views. I'll take that same video, post it on YouTube Shorts, and it will get 30,000 views. What the heck, TikTok? I guess TikTok hates me. I don't know. Anyways, this video is not meant to be social media commentary. Let's get back to cribbing. So stereotypic behaviors are repetitive and mostly invariant behaviors that appear to have no obvious goal or function, at least to the human observer. Stereotypic behaviors are observed in many different species, not just horses. They've been observed in giraffes, cows, mink, several species of primates, birds, and so many others. But today we're just talking about horses. Stereotypic behaviors have traditionally been referred to as stable vices, but this can have negative welfare impacts for the horse due to anthropomorphism, and it really doesn't properly describe the behavioral processes that are happening. There are two main types of stereotypic behaviors: locomotor stereotypic behaviors like stall weaving or box walking, and oral stereotypic behaviors like cribbing or wind sucking. Stall weaving is when a horse weaves their head and neck back and forth, sometimes shifting their weight from one foot to the other. This is commonly seen as funny behavior. There are a lot of videos on TikTok that will take a horse stall weaving and overlay it with like some funny music and people laugh at it. And I get why people are laughing at it and why people find it funny when they have no context, but it's really not something that we as equestrians should be perpetuating. Box or stall walking is basically what it sounds like. The horse will walk in repetitive circles around the stall, sometimes just a few laps, and sometimes it can go on for several minutes at a time. Cribbing, also known as crib biting, is when a horse grasps on a surface or an object with their front teeth, pulls back, and arches their neck. Often this is paired with wind sucking, and you will hear a sort of grunting noise. Wind sucking is very similar to cribbing in its mechanics. The horse will arch their neck and rock back and make a grunting noise as they expel the air. It's important to differentiate between stereotypic behaviors and other unwanted or conflict behaviors. Conflict behaviors like rearing, bucking, or rein pulling come from conflicting or confusing signals in a learned response, and these can typically be resolved by resolving the confusing signals and retraining basic responses. Stereotypic behaviors are a little bit more complicated. Stereotypic behaviors are believed to be indicative of compromised welfare, either current or past, and they're thought to be, at least initially at time of development, a sort of behavioral coping mechanism to cope with stress, frustration, boredom, or deprivation of an ethological need. The current or past thing is really important though, because just because a horse is cribbing right now doesn't mean their current welfare is compromised. These behaviors can become habitual and very hard to eliminate, but we'll get more into that later. These behaviors can also commonly develop from exposure to frequent or chronic stressors, and so these behaviors may be used to alleviate stress. Stereotypies have arisen as a result of modern equine management practices that do not provide horses with everything that they need. Shock of shockers, humans are the problem again! Who would have guessed? We know that humans are the problem because these behaviors are not observed in free-ranging or feral horses. Stereotypic behaviors are commonly referred to as the disease of domestication. In general, stereotypic behaviors develop in horses when they are not allowed to live naturally. When we deprive horses of the things that they need, like forage, movement, or companionship in the way that they need them, we compromise their welfare and increase the risk of these behaviors developing. Stalling or stabling for long periods of time is one of the biggest risk factors. While we as humans tend to find the idea of horses coming in at night when it's dark, cold, maybe wet, pretty appealing, we think that that's what's going to be most comfortable for them. The reality is that that can cause a whole host of problems, and most of our horses would rather be outside in a herd, no matter the weather. Obviously, not in every case. There is 100% a time and a place for the use of stalls, and just because you bring your horse in for a couple hours here and there doesn't mean they're going to start cribbing. Horses are designed to move almost constantly apart from sleep. Even when they graze, they are usually taking a step or two every minute or so, but in a stall, horses usually only have the space to take a couple of steps in any given direction. For most horses, this can cause frustration when they feel the need to move more than their stall allows. This confinement also affects their ability to properly socialize with other horses. While more recent stall designs allow horses to see and or touch each other through bars, and most barns have stalls on both sides of an aisle so horses can see each other, this is not the same as what a horse gets outside in a herd setting. They don't have free access to touch each other, play with each other, or partake in vital activities like mutual grooming. Horses have evolved to spend all of their time in a herd. Keeping them in a stall for over half the day, which is very common at boarding facilities, can cause anxiety and distress due to isolation. It's honestly shocking and a miracle that we are able to train horses to leave their herd at all. Like, the average equestrian takes their horse out of their herd for, at least 2 hours a day, I would say. You take them out, you ride them, you brush them, you do whatever, you take them back. The fact that they're willing to leave their herd is surprising. Or like when we take them away for a weekend for a show, that is amazing. That is amazing that we're able to get them to do that, because that completely goes against their natural instincts. So I find it shocking when I hear people talking about how annoying of a problem a horse being herd bound is, because trust me, I get it. I know it's annoying. My horse also used to be herd bound, but we have to try not to get angry with our horse for them being herd bound, because at the end of the day, herd bound is not a behavioral problem. It's a natural instinct. But stressful outdoor environments can cause stereotypic behaviors as well. Whether it's individual turnout or scary things around the turnout area, or a horse that is kept in a herd that they don't feel super safe or comfortable in, regular stressful conditions outside can also cause stereotypic behaviors. So just because your horse is on 24/7 turnout doesn't necessarily mean they won't develop one of these behaviors, though they probably have a better chance of avoiding it. Sleep and diet have also shown to be pretty important factors when it comes to stereotypic behavior development. Lack of sleep can cause emotional and physical fatigue and distress, which can make a horse less tolerant of suboptimal conditions and leaves them more susceptible to developing a behavioral coping mechanism. A lack of forage can also contribute to stereotypic behaviors. Feeding limited amounts of forage has been linked to increased weaving time and time spent wood chewing in horses, though there is disagreement about whether or not wood chewing is truly a stereotypic behavior, since stereotypic behaviors are defined as behaviors that have no apparent goal or purpose, and people believe that wood chewing is, in many horses, their attempts to supplement their fiber intake. It's hard to say whether or not wood chewing really is a stereotypic behavior. It's possible that it is in some horses and not in others, but that one's a little bit iffy. Horses are designed to spend around 16 to 20 hours a day eating. Their digestive tract is long, but their stomach is relatively small, and because of the way their bodies digest, they need to have a near constant intake of food to prevent gastric ulceration. Domestic horses are commonly fed a few but large meals, and usually 1 or 2 of these per day is concentrates. When the amount of concentrates fed increases, typically the amount of forage fed decreases. A lot of boarding facilities will actually ration hay, which is just such a wild concept to me. They'll give 1 or 2 flakes at turn-in time and then 1 or 2 flakes at night check. Most horses will eat a single small flake of hay within an hour or 2. And if they're in that stall all night, that means they're spending hours with nothing to eat and nothing to do. Even though they will spend part of that time sleeping, they will spend most of that time eating. This can increase boredom, frustration, hunger, obviously, and increase the risk of gastric ulcers. When horses have limited food available, stress and frustration increases and increases the risk of problematic behaviors. There's also some evidence that diets that are just too high in concentrates can on their own cause stereotypic behavior development, though it's really not clear as to why that is. There is also a large amount of concern about how weaning practices affect the development of stereotypic behaviors, particularly cribbing in weanlings. Artificial weaning is considered to be one of the most, if not the most, stressful events of a domestic horse's life. Traditional weaning practices have been coming under increasing scrutiny over the past 10 years or so, as we've had more research come out that shows the psychological and emotional damage that can happen due to early separation. Abrupt artificial weaning has been shown to cause significantly more stress in the foal than a more natural, slow, gradual weaning process. Since repeated and prolonged stress is one of the main causes of stereotypic behaviors, it raises concerns about the utilization of traditional early and cold turkey weaning practices. The post-weaning period is a vital period of development for young horses and a period where poor management practices can have detrimental effect on a foal's mental state and development. Diet and opportunity for locomotor behaviors seem to be the two main areas of concern when it comes to the development of stereotypic behaviors, particularly cribbing in weanlings. Just as in fully grown adult horses, a diet that is too high in concentrates has been shown to increase risk of development of cribbing in weanlings. One study showed that foals fed on concentrates were 4 times more likely to show cribbing behavior than foals who were not fed any concentrates. Post-weaning confinement also appears to have an impact on the development of cribbing and other stereotypies. Weanlings housed in paddocks are shown to have time budgets that are more similar to free-ranging horses than stalled weanlings, and paddock-housed weanlings show less incident of stereotypic behavior development than stalled weanlings. This shows us that the post-weaning period is critical for avoiding the development of stereotypic behaviors. So how can we prevent them? How can we stop them? If our horse is performing a stereotypic behavior, how do we stop them from doing it? General consensus amongst experts is that it is better to prevent the stereotypic behavior from developing in the first place than to try and cure the horse of them after the fact. This is partially because they can be really hard to stop, and partially because physically preventing a horse who has already developed a stereotypic behavior from performing that behavior is widely believed to have a negative impact on that horse's welfare. In some cases. Let me explain. There are some stereotypies that can be reduced and even eliminated through management changes. For some locomotor stereotypic behaviors, changes in management and turnout strategies can help reduce and in some cases eliminate the behavior altogether. For stall weavers and box walkers, sometimes increasing turnout or eliminating stabling altogether can reduce or eliminate the behavior. Stall weaving and box walking are believed to be caused by the frustration that arises from not being able to move freely, so changes in turnout schedules have been utilized to try and improve these behaviors, and there has been some success. Some horses will still pace or weave out in turnout, but some don't feel the need to do it anymore when they're not spending as much time confined. Allowing proper social interaction between horses is another one of the best things that you can do. For many stereotypic horses, this can make a difference in the intensity and frequency of their stereotypic behaviors. Increasing forage and decreasing concentrates are also methods that have shown some promise. Now to get to the prevention that's a welfare issue. There are a lot of devices and substances on the market that are used to prevent horses from performing already developed stereotypies. Cribbing collars, weaving grills, and bitter substances placed on cribbing and wood chewing surfaces are all commonly used, and yet they are somewhat problematic and not totally effective. Grills placed on the openings of stalls are used to deter horses from weaving, but many horses will just result to moving back into the stall and weaving inside the stall as opposed to weaving over the door. There are many bitter substances that can be used to cover surfaces that horses commonly crib or chew on to try and prevent them from latching on. Some people will also even use electric wiring and tape, which is just kind of wild to me. Some people will actually also resort to using shock collars on horses that crib. Cribbing collars are hinged collars that are designed to prevent the horse from arching its neck by applying pressure to the throat and the poll, which makes grasping a surface to crib on incredibly aversive. But in order for these to work, they have to be fastened really tightly. They do work in some cases, but in other cases they fail to fully prevent the behavior, and then when it's taken off, the horse may actually crib more and with more intensity than they did before it was put on. And the problem with all of these devices, apart from the fact that they don't actually address the true underlying issue, is that they can cause discomfort, pain, distress, and in many cases, physically preventing a horse from performing a stereotypy that they have already developed can actually cause them more stress. These behaviors are commonly believed to be coping mechanisms. They are how the horse is dealing with anxiety and stress. So preventing a horse from performing their already developed coping strategy for stress can understandably distress them further. A lot of people are questioning whether or not it is even ethical to prevent a horse from utilizing their coping mechanism. Part of why so many stereotypic behaviors can be so hard to stop is because they actually rewire the way that the brain works. Stereotypic behaviors are linked to dopamine overproduction in the brain. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that is linked to learning, and this stress can cause permanent structural changes to the learning center of the brain. These dopamine rushes can cause a sort of hypermotivation. So even if a horse no longer experiences the stress or suboptimal conditions that initially caused the stereotypy to develop, they may continue the stereotypy for years to come and potentially even for the rest of their life. At the end of the day, unless your horse's health and well-being is being seriously compromised by the stereotypy, it's okay to let them keep doing it. I mean, you need to do your best to make management changes that are going to reduce your horse's necessity to do the behavior and consult your vet when you're doing this. But if those changes don't make a difference and your horse seems otherwise happy and content, then don't stress too much about it. In severe cases with cribbing horses who have worn down their teeth to the point that they can no longer eat properly and are losing weight, instead of using a cribbing collar, some people have taken to providing a cushioned cribbing bar. There is 100% absolutely a time and a place for physical prevention of something like cribbing. There is a time and a place for a cribbing collar. However, from the research that I have done and through my schooling, what I have learned is that a lot of people are very, very quick to go the cribbing collar route as opposed to trying something like 24/7 turnout first. I am not saying that people that use cribbing collars are abusing their horses, okay? I don't want people to feel like I'm attacking them. I am sharing the information about how a cribbing collar works so that people can make more educated decisions about whether or not that is the right course of action for them. Because of course, there are horses whose teeth get really, really worn down from cribbing to the point where they're losing weight, they can't keep weight on, they can barely eat. And if you've tried everything else, you've changed all of your management, everything is like tip-top shape and they're still doing it, and you and your vet have serious concerns, then yes, absolutely, try a cribbing collar, because you may not have any other options, and eventually if a horse can't keep weight on, they will pass away. So there is a time and a place for them, but I do not believe that they should be the first plan of attack. If you go down the path of prevention, you may encounter something called post-inhibitory rebound. This is when the horse performs the stereotypy more than usual once the prevention technique or device is removed. So if you put a cribbing collar on your horse and then you take it off like 5 hours later, the horse may actually crib more and with more intensity than they did before you put it on. Kind of like how if you're on a diet and you haven't been able to eat ice cream, once your diet ends, then you binge on ice cream and every other unhealthy food that you haven't been able to eat. There are those who believe that stereotypies like cribbing can actually increase risk of colic and other health conditions, but we don't really have any conclusive data to back that up. We have to weigh the data that does support this correlation with the management practices that are being used. If 7 horses in this one barn are all cribbers and they all colic, is it really the cribbing? Or is it how long they're kept in the stall? Is it the hay that they're eating? Is it the concentrates? Is it the bedding, right? There's so many different factors we have to look at. There's also a common belief that horses can actually learn to crib by watching another horse do it. That's not true. Again, if multiple horses in the same barn are exhibiting the same stereotypy, we have to look at the management practices that are being used in that barn. The idea that stereotypic behaviors are learned from other horses is a common and dangerous misconception. In many instances, this causes the stereotypic horse to be isolated so that no other horses can see them or learn the behavior. That complete social isolation is incredibly damaging to the horse's mental and emotional state. There's also technically no conclusive scientific evidence that locomotor stereotypies can cause musculoskeletal problems or uneven hoof wear. Like, we don't have research studies that have proven that, but we can kind of make our own conclusions based off of observing those horses on our own. We have a lot of anecdotal evidence that supports locomotor stereotypies causing musculoskeletal pain, discomfort, and issues, as well as uneven hoof wear. And although anecdotal evidence is not a replacement for scientific research data, it shouldn't be completely discounted. And I mean, when we think about it logically, repeatedly moving your head and neck from side to side constantly all the time, that's gonna cause some pain. It just is. Little bit of a correction there. We do have some research that suggests a potential link between locomotor stereotypies and musculoskeletal pain, but as far as I'm aware, we don't have any studies that were done specifically on that topic. It's kind of like a side note in the research about stereotypies, we noticed that this horse was more stiff, or we noticed that this horse was expressing more pain, so there is some research that does potentially support that, but it's not something that has been researched in depth. But again, regardless of whether or not it has been researched in depth, we can make that kind of judgment on our own. If we watch a horse moving its neck side to side constantly, it's going to cause some discomfort at the very least. That's just kind of logic. At the end of the day, the best thing that you can do for your horse that is exhibiting a stereotypic behavior is to try and reduce their need to perform that behavior. Management changes to help reduce stress, frustration, loneliness, and boredom, along with diet adjustments, can make a big difference for many horses. And above that, the best thing that you can do is try and prevent a stereotypic behavior from developing in the first place, since once they are developed and once they become habitual, they can be nearly impossible to stop. Many horses will continue to carry out these behaviors even once the distress is gone. It's important that we stop seeing these behaviors as stable vices and start seeing them for what they really are: a sign that a horse's welfare, either current or past, has been compromised. Seeing them as naughty behaviors can lead to punishment, which is 100% unhelpful and 100% harmful. If we see stereotypic behaviors for what they truly are, then we can strive to make improvements for our horses' lives and their welfare. Okay guys, that is what I've got for you today. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. Remember to click like and subscribe because I post new videos every single week. So if you want to see more videos like this, then that's what you got to do. As always, if you've got a video request, leave it in the comments. I do love to scroll through the comments, see your stories, see your requests, answer your questions. I usually try to spend a little bit of time in there, so let me know your thoughts. You can follow me over on TikTok and Instagram if you want to see more of me and more of my animals and what I do with them. I'm pretty active over there on those accounts. Anyways, this has been a lot of information. My throat is quite sore. I gotta go. So until I see you next time, please remember to think critically.